and welcome to this week's broadcast. I am Ann LaFollette, and I am a surface pattern designer and a creative coach. And I'm excited to talk about this week's topic because it's actually all about getting over your feeling of overwhelm. And I am going to share 4 ways to bust through overwhelm. And you might think it's very odd for me to be talking about this at the very beginning of January, or actually I'm recording this in the middle of January. But actually, January, which is a time when people sit down to make resolutions, can frequently be a time when we start to feel very overwhelmed because we might have made very big plans that we start to feel might not be really doable. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And part of feeling overwhelmed at this time of the year is because you might have taken time off and now you're going back to work, and that can be overwhelming because you might feel like you took too much time off, or maybe you didn't take any time off, and so you're already now in the middle of January trying to start to make progress on your goals, and that is overwhelming. Or you might just feel like you were very, very busy over the course of the holidays and didn't really have a chance to take a deep breath and think about how you want to move through 2020. So I want to talk first about what causes overwhelm to begin with, and then we're going to jump into the 4 ways that you can bust through it. Feeling overwhelmed is a place that you don't want to stay in for long. And there are 3 main reasons that we can feel overwhelmed. Number 1 is, and I kind of touched on this, it's this feeling of being overcommitted, that you've already signed up for way too much. The other thing actually, which is a little bit counterintuitive, is procrastination. That if you procrastinate, that can actually make the sense of overwhelm even bigger because you haven't gotten anything done yet. And then number 3 is unrealistic expectations. You might have put together a giant laundry list of things that you want to do, but you didn't actually take out your calendar to figure out, how do I spread those across the entire year, or even just try to break them down into the first quarter. And so that can move you into a feeling of overwhelm. So my goal today in this broadcast is to help you move through overwhelm as quickly as possible and have some go-to strategies when you start to feel overwhelmed. So let me jump into those next. So the first thing I find really helpful is actually to make a list. And when you're making that list, you're going to make some decisions. And what I mean by that is you're going to make a list of the things that really are the most important for you to accomplish. And my recommendation is always to do it in shorter periods of time or shorter chunks of time than necessarily the whole year. So you might want to sit down and make a list of what you want to accomplish in the first quarter, and then break that down into, okay, what's reasonable for me to get done in January versus in February and versus in March. Now, this is not meant to be a to-do list. This is much more intended to be kind of a strategy plan for how you're going to achieve some of your big goals and how you're looking at your overall calendar to break up chunks of time when you're actually going to be able to do the work required to achieve the goal. So that is number 1. It's both making a list, and then as you make that list, blocking out the time that's required, and also making some key decisions about what you're going to potentially take off your plate. Now, number 2 is a really fun one, and it is to get an accountability buddy. And I'm a huge fan of accountability buddies. I have had one in some shape or form for many years. And sometimes it's just a friend of mine who I decide to call every Sunday night and check in with him or her and talk about what it is that we accomplished, celebrate our successes for the week, and then talk about what we have planned to do for the following week, and so forth. And it can be a little informal. It doesn't have to be every Sunday night. It could be, of course, any day of the week that you want to pick that's going to work for you. And it might turn out sometimes to be every other week if somebody's on vacation or traveling. But having a friend who's interested in what you're doing and you're interested in what they're doing as your accountability buddy can be super helpful. Another way to think about an accountability buddy is actually a mastermind. Now, I am in a fabulous mastermind that meets on Friday mornings. And there are 7 or 8 of us in the group, and it's got a very sort of repeatable, dependable cadence to it. It's every Friday morning when we all hop on together. We do it on a Zoom call. We go in order. Each one of us talks about our biggest wins from the week prior. And then we do a little round robin. Everybody gets to share their big wins. And as we listen to each other's wins, that frequently sparks I'd really like to hear a little bit more about that thing you just accomplished. So we jot those ideas down, and once everybody's had their turn, we then talk about who has a topic that they would really like to get input from the group about. And then frequently those come out of what somebody shared as a big win. So then we'll have a conversation around that. And then of course there's a fabulous moderator. I think that's the right word, right? Moderator, who makes sure he's tracking time for us. And then before we wrap up, we do a round robin again, and we each talk about what are the big goals we have for the coming week. And then it happens like that week after week. So that's a more structured and a larger group to have accountability with, but it's also a really, really great idea. And so if you, for example, are in a creative group, or you're in a library group, or maybe even a book club, you could turn that into an accountability sort of team that might work really, really well for you. Number 3 is to clarify your vision. And I think this is actually really important to do throughout the year. At the beginning of the year, people frequently do what's called a mood board or a vision board. There are frequently workshops that pop up at your local co-working space or in your local library, where people get together and you rip images out of magazines, and then you get a big piece of either large piece of paper or a foam board, and you place the images that kind of have a meaning for you, and then you talk about how do they represent your vision for the year. Frequently people will also pick a one word for the year. My one word for 2020 is intention. I really want to go through 2020 with intention and with intentionality around everything that I'm going to be doing for my creative community this year. So revisiting your vision and making sure that that is still true for you, and that it's totally fine for your vision to ebb and flow and or pivot slightly as you go through the year. So doing this exercise more than just on January 1st, I think is very important. And to lean back into what is the most important thing for you to be spending time on. And if in particular you're in my creative community and you really want to lean into your creativity, how are you making sure that you're making time for that? And how are you making investments in yourself so that you're educating yourself and taking your creative capabilities to the next level? So that's number 3, creating and revisiting that vision throughout the year. And number 4 is to create habits that support you. Now, I have talked about morning routines before, and I am a big fan of morning routines because I think that it sets you up for success for the day to come. And in today's world, where we all are basically connected to our phone 24/7, the worst thing you can do, in my humble opinion, when you wake up is to reach for your phone and start to go down the rabbit hole of checking your email or looking on social media. It can totally sort of derail when you actually get in the shower, or when you have your cup of coffee, or when you can actually get started on your day. So I highly recommend that you develop a morning routine that works for you. And it doesn't have to be very involved, because some people are not morning people. But for me, and I know I've described this in the past, and so sometimes I change my morning routine up a little bit, but generally speaking, I get up, I get my cup of coffee, and I come downstairs, and I light a candle, because I have a huge collection of scented candles for some reason, and I need to start to use them. And then I'll sit down at the kitchen table, because you guys know I'm a kitchen table artist. I don't have a fancy studio. And I will either journal, or I'll do some doodling, or some kind of a very, very informal, low stress, art project. And it's not even a project. It's just getting my hands moving, working with my paints, just using some of my pens, just something. It can look like anything that works for you, and you don't have to do it in the morning. You could actually do it if you're more of an afternoon or an evening person. You could totally do it in the evening, for example. But I do think that having habits that support you, especially around your creativity, so that you're blocking off time every day to do creative work, is very, very important. Another idea around habits that work for you is learning how to gracefully say no. Now, this took me personally a very long time to learn, and I'm frankly still learning it, because I'm very much of a people pleaser. My whole life I've been a people pleaser. When I was in my corporate job, I was a people pleaser. I would always say yes to more and more and more and more. And I now realize it's very important for us to learn how to say no gracefully. Because if someone's asking you to do something that you really don't have time for, or you really don't want to do, or it's not going to actually move you and what you want to achieve forward, It's much better to learn how to say, I'm so sorry, I don't actually have time to do that for you, but here's a suggestion. You might have somebody else you can refer them to, or you might have another idea of who might be able to help them. That's much better than you saying yes and then adding that additional pressure on your own shoulders about a new task you just took on, or also then feeling really bad about the fact that you keep procrastinating doing that thing because of course it falls to the bottom of your list because it's not important for you to do it, other than to, of course, deliver on your promise. And then what I would also say around finding habits that support you is exercise is really important. Just getting outside in the fresh air. It doesn't have to be aggressive exercise like running or anything like that. It can just be walking and getting out in the fresh air, finding a couple of stairs that you can also climb when you're out there to get a little bit of an extra aerobic activity, or going swimming if you love to go swimming. But getting outside of the house is really important, especially for entrepreneurs like us, and me in particular. I'm a creative and I work from home. I have to make sure that I don't sit at the computer all day long without taking breaks and going outside, getting some exercise, and then coming back in refreshed. So those are the 4 ways to break through that feeling of overwhelm. And I hope that you try one or all of them to see how they work for you. And I want to personally invite you to enroll in my Pattern Design Academy program. I only open enrollment a couple times a year, and enrollment opens on January 20th. It's only going to be open for 4 days, and I'm recording this so that it's open when I'm talking about it to you. Depending on when you're watching it, it might be closed, but if that's the case, you can join the wait list. But listen, the most important thing, and the reason I want to personally invite you to check it out, and there's a link below this video where you can go check it out and get all the details about it, is because if in 2020 you really want to take your creativity to the next level and learn surface pattern design, which is what I teach, and essentially that's turning your doodles into dollars, I would love to be your guide. And I have a phenomenal course. People took it all of last year and I got rave reviews. Let me read a couple of those to you now. It's always more fun to hear from other people than directly from me about my course. Also, I was brought up to never brag, and so this helps me also, so I don't have to keep talking about it. So let me tell you what some of my students have said. I am so impressed with the level of detail that's packed into every aspect of this course. The bite-sized steps inside the modules keep you engaged and progressing without overload. The challenges at the end of every module keep me on track, engaged, so I know I'm progressing every single week, and I love the feedback and support in the Facebook group. I cannot believe I'm designing patterns so quickly. Thank you, Anne. And that is from Andrea. Thank you, Andrea. Here is Joel Marie. She says, this program exceeded my expectations. The 3 things I liked the most were, number 1, I love your energy level and positive vibe. Number 2, I appreciate the transcripts you provided for us. And number 3, I like the ongoing access to the videos. You get lifetime access if you purchase the program, so you can watch the videos over and over again, which is one of the best things about online learning. I have to say, it's totally awesome. So she said, thank you for your dedication to teaching and sharing your knowledge with us. So thank you, Joel Marie. I really appreciate it. So here's what Katie Butterfield said. Katie Butterfield said, I signed up for Anne's program with the goal of making unique patterns to help me with my caregiver website. In addition to teaching the basics of surface pattern design, Anne also covered multiple ways we, her students, could use our newfound skill in our personal and professional lives. Patterns are everywhere. I appreciate that Anne taught us a new skill and gave us ideas on how to move forward and actually use this new skill that we invested money in learning. Her course is worth every penny, and I am so happy I took your course. You really helped me figure out how to take a giant step forward in my career. Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate that. All right, I'm just gonna read one more from Trish. Trish said, not only did I learn about surface pattern design, I also had so much fun and shared my experience with some wonderful, creative, and supportive people. Anne, you are a fantastic teacher, supportive, enthusiastic, and knowledgeable. I really appreciated your enthusiasm and warm, supportive presence. The Facebook group is fantastic, and although I didn't post very much, I really enjoyed being a part of it. The course is visually appealing with lots of great content. You provide resources resources and downloads, which are highly relevant. So there you have it. Please click the link below this video to enroll. I would love to have you join me, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe, and as I always like to say in closing, I am Ann LaFollette, and it's never too late to create. Bye for now.